Hey, hey, hey.
Hello.
Welcome.
How's everybody doing?
Oh, doing all right. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness. What are you doing, my friend?
Welcome. I've been all day long working on this script for this comic book that I'm writing right now, which
Nice.
is super cool. Just because I have to do all of this research into the seven sins. And by virtue of that, I've been researching the seven virtues and the book of Revelation and all these things. And there's some really awesome inherent things to kind of learn about that, because the third horseman of famine, he's got these weights in his hands, and when you
Okay.
read the passages from the like scales, and when you read the passage, it says something to the effect, or his introduction, that he is it says something about the cost of the wheat and the cost of the barley,
Mhm.
and then that it's not going to affect the cost of the wine or the oil. And I kept reading that going like, I don't understand this. Like, I don't understand what this means.
Mhm.
And like, I'm going to like adjust it. And then I kept like trying to get interpretations. And all the initial interpretations of it were that basically inflation, that, when the prices of things, goods get inflated, it's difficult for everybody. And then I dug a little deeper and it reestablished what was said in a different way. It said, no, it's not about inflation. It's about taxation. It's about you're going to pay for every day's worth of work. You're going to have to pay. And that really threw me for a loop and like illuminated me in so many ways that that the four horsemen of the apocalypse were essentially a false prophet is the first one,
Mhm.
war, which is very understandable, and then not so much famine but taxation. What happens after war? And what happens? You get yourself a false prophet, and a false prophet could just be anybody who basically leads you to war. So somebody
Okay.
who righteously feels like they know the way better than everybody else, and then they're going to go and they're going to subjugate through war the people. And then once they've subjugated the people, what are they going to do? They're going to tax them, whether they emotionally tax them or whatever. And then where does that lead? Death. The slow death, or you could think of it in terms of the plague or pestilence. But plague and pestilence, that's just weakness in the body. I'm so weak. I'm being hurt. I'm bogged down, like that spiritual sort of demise. But
Right.
interesting when I really finally like understood them, that it was way more about subjugation and forcing people to pay
Wow.
pay something to you. So I was
Wow.
like, wow, this is
So
super.
this is for this you can't really talk much about this stuff you're
Yes,
working on, I guess, other than the research that you're doing.
yeah, I'm doing a lot of research on the
But you
seven
know what?
heaven.
I think it's almost a great segue to to talk to our guest tonight, because our guest has some amazing stories to tell and is involved with some amazing peace building and
I love building peace.
bringing love to the world, and kind of the opposite of what it is that you're researching right now. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, so
Yes.
dark. Um,
Well, the
but
fifth horseman brings about the peace. So, that's why I went with fifth
all
horseman.
right, there you go. There you go. Awesome. Well, it sounds like you have been super busy. I've also been super busy. This week has been amazing. Still working with Jackie the Joke Man on standupmemories.com, which has been really well received, and I'm just feeling super great about it. And just I had a meeting with the Boy Scouts of America. We're doing some work with the Boy Scouts of
Oh, that's
America.
awesome.
We're going to be working on a campaign with them. So like, life is just going so great. I've been like talking to the universe a lot, and it's interesting. I was talking to our guest, and I was just talking about the show and how busy I've been, and I haven't really been able to manage the show the way I'd like to, like get guests lined up and have a calendar full of like this week and this week and this week. You know how we did it over the summer. Um, but the universe is just delivering guests. So I'll connect with somebody during the week, and then I'll be like, oh, that person would make a great guest. And so this week, our guest I was just watching. I guess I saw on her Facebook page that she was on another podcast, and I clicked on it to see the story, and I watched the story, and coincidentally, she's the wife of one of our previous guests.
Oh,
And I'll reveal that mystery in just a second. But I watched this interview with her, and it was amazing. I had an emotional reaction, and you know what that means with me. Like, that means something's up. Your soul is being touched. And so I reached out and said, "Hey, would you like to be on the show?" And I don't know. We haven't spoken about what her moment of transformation is, to spirituality, which is a lot of what we talk about. But I thought it was going to be really important to let her tell her story about what she's doing, and what she's bringing to the world, because again, I just had such an emotional response to it. So
I'll
you
let
know
you lead the way, my friend.
yeah, I would like to welcome to the show Liz Gannon Graydon. Welcome, Liz. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to talk to my
It's so good to see your face.
Nice to meet you, sweetie.
So good to see you.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you. I'm so excited to talk about what you've been doing and what I experienced when I saw you just telling your story. You're such an amazing, amazing storyteller. And
Thank
I
you.
can only imagine, I've heard the story, but I want you to tell it. I can only imagine what it's like to be on the receiving end of what it is that you're doing. But before we get into that, there is something important that we have to take care of. And that is, this is the live stream of consciousness, and we always ask our guests the
Oh, our
same
first question.
question.
I was
Our
like,
first question, it's always the same, and we always get a different answer because, well, you'll know why once you know the question. And the question is, what is consciousness to you? What does consciousness mean when you think about consciousness?
I think about this a lot, and the answer that I'm going to give, my dad died of Alzheimer's,
Okay.
and my mom had passed before, and my dad was remarried. And his wife asked me if I felt a personal connection to God.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think I feel a personal connection to everything.
Uh-oh, you froze up there, Liz, for a second. Hopefully you'll be back
for her
in
to
a
freeze
moment.
up.
As
I
she
felt
Oh my God.
first connection.
You're back. You're back. Okay. So you were
Okay.
telling us you felt a connection to everything. I
Personal
think you were going to say
connection to
everything.
everything. And for me, that's consciousness, this sense that we're all interconnected.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So perfect. So beautiful. And that's, again, that's is kind of the answer that we always get, but always expressed in such a different, eloquent way. It's so amazing to ask that question. So awesome. So the thing that we usually talk about here on the live stream is spiritual transformation. We always bring someone on who had a very specific moment from when they were not conscious to when they were. And I'd love to hear that from you. So if you want to give us your story of that before we go
like
into your
to get
peace
the
building.
long version of this, but so many people are dealing with so many unique situations. And I know, for me and Michael, we kind of felt like we were all alone in the world until one day we started to kind of accumulate a number of other people's experiences, and enough of those little pieces of their experience were enough to kind of make us go, all right, I'm not the only one. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do here by collecting all the unique stories. So please, from your perspective, and as long as you want to take to get it out.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, later in the story, I can tell you that moment of transformation when I ended up doing the very specific work I'm doing now. But my moment of if you want to talk about that moment of transformation to consciousness,
Yeah.
very early, and I can remember it so clearly.
Awesome.
I was 2 years old, and I must have been closer to 3. My parents always said I was 2, and I was hospitalized with pneumonia. And I was in a tent, and I was really sick, right? And they didn't know if I was going to make it at one point. And I was scared because those were the days when you were not allowed to have parents visit and stay.
Oh, wow.
And one night, this is the only way I can say it, an angel came to me. I really felt the presence of an angel, the spirit, who told me I was going to be okay.
Wow.
And the next day I wasn't scared, and I told my parents, and my mother said, no, it wasn't an angel, it was a nurse. They wear white. And I said, but I knew it wasn't. Like, I had seen nurses every night, right? I just
Right,
had
right,
the
right.
sense that I was connected to someone, and yeah, just connected to this bigger force that was taking care of me. And it was, yeah, very clear.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's totally awesome. Yeah, I told a story recently about being in a meditation, and in that meditation, it was the only time that this really happened. Kind of just picturing everybody around me, and we were all bathed in this light, and this young girl who was there meditating, this very young girl, 8 years old, who had meditated in school. It was very interesting that she was familiar with meditation, came over to me and told me everything was going to be all right, exactly what you just said. And after the meditation, Steve Interante, who introduced me to the girl's mom,
Mm.
as she introduced me to the mom, the girl came over to me and just hugged my leg. And it was so
I
amazing.
was really kind of hoping that the story was going to become, what little girl? There's a little girl.
No, it was connecting to everyone on this different realm. It
Yeah,
certainly, I totally relate to what you're saying.
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's
You
that's
know,
great.
when you're little, you tell those stories, but you stop telling them because people don't believe them. You know,
Right.
so then you keep them to
Right.
yourself.
You are getting so much love. I don't know if can you see these messages when I pop
I
them up?
can,
Oh,
I
okay.
can.
So many people are just so happy to see you. I'm
Oh,
so
that's
happy to
nice.
see that. I thank everybody for coming and seeing you here, and I thank you for bringing your friends here, and again your story, which I'm so excited for you to hear again. I hope I don't cry. Um,
It's
but
interesting. There's a lot of remembrance, I think, that goes on in like deeper levels of meditation. You know, when you connect, and it's really kind of blown my mind. But it's happened enough times now that I give credence to it. But where I'll be sort of sitting and I'll realize like I'm experiencing something, a feeling, or a sort of a state of being, and it occurs to me like I've felt this before, like, and even like I can remember like I used to feel this at my friend's house, that this friend who I saw for a little while when I was in fifth grade, and we would sit and we would draw, or we would do whatever, and I would feel this way that I'm feeling now, and I haven't felt this way since that. I haven't felt relaxed, since that time. But it is very true of sort of we get out of practice, and there's something that I think we said on the show a long time ago, but there was an interpretation to children. We tend to say that children are sort of blind; they can't really see anything when they're young or when they first come into the world. And the perspective was that they're not blind; they're blinded. That they're
Mm.
perceiving so much of reality that they slowly tune in to the voice of their mother and the feeling of their father's hand, and that is how they anchor themselves in. And the more this reality, this world is sort of reinforced for them, the easier it is for them to latch on. But there are aspects of their experience that aren't reinforced, and those eventually kind of fall by the wayside. And I've felt like at certain times when I've connected to meditation or whatever, that like I've gotten them back. I've opened up the door back to some of the
totally,
green pathways or soul pathways that were there when I was younger, I should say.
Mm.
totally.
Wow.
So
So can you tell us what is this? I want to cry too. What's
Okay.
what are you so excited about?
So, Michael, I guess, I told a few different stories, so I'll try to connect. And you talked about moments, right? I'm going to try to connect 3 moments in my life, which led me to the exact path I'm on right. And the first, Jesse, should I call you the fifth horseman? I like that. My first memory of the world was the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh,
wow.
because it's the first time I watched my father cry while he was watching the television.
wow.
My
Wow.
father was a college professor, and he was an activist, and Martin Luther King was a real hero to him. And even though I was only 5, I knew who he was, right? I knew who King was. I know how important he was. And I went to my dad and I said, I don't understand why anyone would want to kill someone like him. And this, Michael, this is how my father spoke to. Well, I was still 4, almost 5-year-old, and he said, there are things we'll never understand. He said, but the work that Martin left undone was to create what he called the beloved community. He said, that's your job. You're here to create the beloved community. And when I think back on that, Michael, I read once, and I don't remember who said it, that we don't give young people goals that are worthy of their greatness.
Mm.
And I think about the fact that when I was 5 years old, my father gave me this goal that set it on the path to this greater path, right? So I knew I was here to create beloved community.
Very inspiring, Liz.
Thank you, thank you. And
I felt kids, so I'm like, oh my God, I need to tell them some things.
That's great, amazing. See that? You've already created ripples already. You just begun to spoke.
And so now fast forward to, I followed in my dad's footsteps in that I became a teacher, and I was teaching middle school. And every year I taught middle school social studies. And every year I would say to them something to the effect of, you guys are the future, it's up to you to make the world a better place. And one girl raised her hand, I'm gonna say her name is Jessica Molinades. Jessica Molinades raised her hand and she said, Miss Graydon, adults always say that, but what would better look like? And I said, what do you mean? She said, this is how the world is. If you want me to make it better, what would that look like? And Michael, that was a question that really became my North Star. It turned my life kind of upside down and on its head. And I thought, oh my God, that's an amazing question. And I thought I would love to spend time answering that question. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend the time and I'm going to.
So powerful how you received that question.
Oh, I knew it was life-changing.
Yeah.
But the one thing I thought, people think that teachers have a lot of spare time. And that might be true if you're not a good teacher. But if you're a good teacher, you don't have a lot of spare time. So I was trying to figure out how I could teach, and I envisioned it as a book. I was going to write a book. It was going to be called What Better Looks Like. And at the time, and I don't know if you said who my husband was, right? My husband, Rob Graydon, is a filmmaker and an artist. And at the time, he was doing stand-up comedy. And we had this beautiful, we lived in Astoria, and we had this beautiful friend, Maria. And she was a dancer, and she was a writer, and she was a stand-up, and she was really she's just the most disciplined artist I'd ever been around. And I don't know how you guys feel, but I always think if you want to find an artist that's disciplined, find a dancer. They're like super disciplined.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, but she didn't drive. So
dancing.
What?
I said I need to take up dancing.
So she didn't drive though. So she and Rob used to book shows together, and they'd go on the road together. Mm-hmm. And so this particular year that this girl asked this question, I had February break, and I thought, I'm going to sit with Marie. I'm going to go with them on the road. They booked a few shows on the road. I said, I'm going to join them, and I'm going to pick her brain. I'm going to find out maybe if I get up at 3 every morning and write before class, and I'll figure out how to write and do this.
Her discipline secret, right?
Yeah. And she was great. She loved the idea, and she gave me all these. All this great advice. And then when we got off the road, this is still hard for me to say. My dear friend took her life, and she mailed me a suicide note.
Wow!
And in the note was a check for the amount of money I made in a year teaching. And she said, Liz, I know you will not agree with this choice I made for my life, but I want you to take the time, and I want you to figure out what better looks like. I want you to I want to be kind of your silent partner. And I thought,
wow.
I know it's so hard to say. That was 28 years ago.
Wow. I feel it. I feel it. I see Jesse feels it too.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And so for me,
there's a lot of silent partners out there, and I think that you're actually very lucky that it was put to you that way, because when I started to channel, and not that I think of myself as a very good one, I would have the dead sort of appear to me, kind of scratching at my head whenever they were mentioned. And they pretty much always wanted me to say the same thing to whoever it was. And it was that they were really there trying to get their friend's attention, mm-hmm. and that their friend wasn't taking it seriously enough, mm-hmm. but they were there to muse for them. They were there to conspire and plan, encourage them, and that they needed them to know it was true, it was real. It was always so hard because even people who, like, when you tell somebody that like you're friends with you and they're working with you, they're like, yeah, I know. But like, yeah, I know. They're telling me to tell you this. Like, you must not know it the way they want you to know it.
Yeah.
And but I think you do know. I think you got
I,
that.
I do know. And you know, and it was that combination of things that didn't let me go, right? So I had Marie's question, I had Jessica's question, what would better look like?
Right.
And then that belief in me. And I thought, I played with the idea, and so I took a year off. I went to my principal and I said, I'm not coming back. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm taking a year off. And in that time, Michael and Jesse, I read every spiritual book. I read Marianne Williamson. I read everything Gandhi ever wrote, King ever wrote. I wrote, read everything. And at the end, I still didn't have an answer. So
you were studying.
Yeah. So I went back to teaching, right? I went back to teaching in a different school. And I just started with the question. And then I hit this moment where the reason it took me, I think, so long is I thought I had to have an answer. And what I realized is I really just needed to ask the question. And at that time, I had started to volunteer with an organization called the Peace Alliance, Department of Peace Campaign.
Hello, Peace Alliance.
Yeah, and I met a lot of really beautiful people who are working in the peace building world. And I met a small group. I became a state coordinator for New York. So anyone who wanted to work in the organization or volunteer with the organization for New York would come to me.
Okay.
And I found this great group of people. And along with my husband, we decided we were going to co-found an organization. Instead of a book, it was going to be like an online presence. And one of the first people I met, Jesse, was a woman named Marie Ukeye. And when I met her, the only thing I knew about her was that she had survived the genocide in Rwanda. And I talked to her about how I wanted to create this organization called What Better Looks Like. And she said to me, you know what, Liz, this is exactly the work I want to do. She said, I have been approached by so many people who want me to tell my sad story of the genocide. She said, I don't want to tell my sad story because then I become tied to my sad story. I want to write about my bonus life, right? And what I'm here to do. So the group of us who co-founded, and we're a really small group, right? Along with Rob, we're a group of 8. And we founded it on really 4 ideas and 2 questions that I can go through quickly, right? And the first idea is we're here to create beloved community. That's why we're here. The second idea.
I'm going to put up your website here so you can keep talking.
Yeah, the second idea came from something that I didn't know until I was an adult because I grew up a city and a suburban girl, and I know nothing about nature.
This is so great.
Nothing, right? Nothing about nature. And I was invited to do a peace conference upstate, and there was hiking involved, and we're walking around nature. And the gentleman who was leading us around said, wherever nature creates a poison, the antidote grows within reach. Now, I don't know if that's literally true, but it was like a psh moment, right? And I thought, I had a lot of people bring programs into the schools when I was a teacher. And I knew they didn't make a darn bit of difference in whether or not my kids did drugs or didn't do drugs or any of that. And I said, because there was a problem here, right? And there's a solution created over there, and they try to graft the solution onto the problem. And I said, this is what King knew, this is what Gandhi knew. Whoever's experiencing the problem has to have the say in creating the solution, right?
Absolutely. And you really hit on something that's beautiful there, Liz. We have this tendency, and I mean, it really comes straight out of terrestrial medicine, to try to hide the symptom. If you're having pain or you're having a problem, that is a symptom that something is wrong. To get to the bottom of what is causing the symptom is what we want. But we have a tendency as a society across the board to just mask the symptom. Even something like if you talk in like agriculture, or rather, in the production of meat, right? We created a situation with E. coli because we were feeding corn to these pigs and these cows, and they created this bacteria called E. coli. If we got all of the pigs and all the cows off of corn and put them back onto grass, we would have decimated E. coli. Instead, we're like, how do we live with this? How do we cover it up and it'll still exist? Instead of going, oh, I see why the problem is being caused. Let's eliminate the cause of that problem. So, I mean, what you're talking about is, hey, how do we get to the cause as opposed to how do we try to treat the symptom?
Yeah, so true. Yeah. And then the third idea came from Rob, my husband, right, who's an artist. And he said he felt everyone came to the planet to be a healer, an artist, or a teacher, or some combination of the three, right? We're here to heal, create, or teach something. And then the final one really came to me from Marie Michael. When we were, spending weeks and months together, kind of setting up the organization, what it would look like, and what our mission statement would be, etc. She said, Liz, the reason why the genocide was so deadly was because it was so well organized at every level of society. She said, if we're going to be that well organized in the name of hate and violence, we had better get that well organized in the name of love and peace. And so the fourth idea behind what better looks like is the idea that we need to create infrastructures that foster beloved community, right? It's not just going to happen. So when we look around society, right, do we have education systems that foster beloved communities? We have healthcare systems that foster beloved community, right? What do our systems reflect that idea of beloved community? So those are the four ideas, right? We're here to create a beloved community. Whoever is experiencing a problem has to have the say in creating it. We're all here though to heal, create, and teach something. And the last one is we need to build infrastructures that are going to foster beloved community.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. What I love so much about what I saw and what you're saying is you're not just you are answering the question. You know what I mean? You're not just saying, hey, we need to make a change. You're actually offering up ideas that are so simple and so basic to actually make that change. And really what I love also is, and I'm not sure how much you've told of the story, is the influence and the involvement of the youth. You know what I mean? The message to the youth. I mean, that's where you started with the story. So, I mean, that's just amazing. So I just want to address some of these comments. You got being in Liz's world sphere definitely made my life better. Being connection is what better looks like to me. And that's almost what you said about being conscious, right? Just to be in connection is to be conscious. And it's so great because I know you probably have a lot of spiritual friends. I know I do. We do here at the live stream of consciousness. But I mean, everybody's talking about buzz, the shift that we're going through. You know what I mean? And here we are literally talking to somebody who's a part of that. And it's just so amazing to hear the story and to be able to give it some air, you know what I mean? Give it some life by just sharing it with Jesse, because I know, look at how excited Jesse is.
Oh, you had me crying. Like you've touched on something the way like a movie might touch on something, where like the concept is kind of scratching at your feelings and making you like sad, if you think too hard about a rape, or you think too hard about somebody being tortured and killed, your feelings get involved. And what better looks like really hits, for me, it scratches that bit of idealism, it really just like warms my heart. And just every time I say it out loud, I just kind of go, I love that question's being asked, it really just, it really.
Yeah, if I can, I'd love to give you two quick examples, like from actual workshops we did, right?
Oh, hey, we're only halfway through. We got plenty of time.
Oh, okay. We do two main projects, right? My friend Marie from Rwanda, she had asked us, when we asked her what would better look like, and she said, really, there's a village near where she lived in Rwanda, and the people were survivors of the genocide. A lot of them were orphaned or widowed. So we kind of adopted this community. We met with them. We met with the elders. We kind of decided how to help the community, and we've sent, I think it's 23, if someone's on there could correct me, students to university, right? Because these were kids who would never get to university.
Okay.
We also set up sewing programs for women who who didn't want to go to university, and we're helping them kind of make business plans,
Learning a trade. Yeah.
working with people on the ground. But we do a lot of local workshops, and one of the main ones we do is really, it's just based on 2 questions. For you right now, what would better look like?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the second one is, what are you here to heal, create, or teach? And one of the things we like to do is we bring art supplies, lots of art supplies, like it's very hands-on, right? And say, we want you to create a visual representation of what better looks like to you. And I just want to share 2 because they touch my heart. One was a middle school, and I find even adults love to work with Play-Doh. I'm just going to say it, right? Even adults.
Listen, we could talk about that forever. Creativity is everything, right?
And so we were working with a group of middle school students, and one kid took pipe cleaners, right? Made 2 little stick figures.
Mm-hmm.
And she put yellow Play-Doh in one of the heads and red Play-Doh in the other. And then she built a bridge, and it was yellow and red. And she said, for me, what better looks like is I want to take the ideas in my head and build them in the world, but I want to connect them with the ideas that other people are building in the world.
Wow.
And that was a little kind of esoteric, but it was really so beautiful.
Brilliant. Yeah. It's freaking
brilliant.
brilliant.
That's exactly what's like, it's the connection to all things that you were talking about, and also that, because if we're all connected and we're all one thing, then we're all teachers and artists and and healers, and
Exactly.
how does that really happen? It happens by being the reeds of wheat that are leaning against each other, as opposed to the weeds of wheat that are like too heavy from the weight of their own ideas.
Artistic expression is so loud. Such a great statement. Yeah.
That is a great
So
statement.
true.
I'm getting a lot of requests for you to talk about your tea parties.
I was going to let you get to that, but continue. Yeah, continue.
Okay. So it's going to be 9 years now. 9 years ago, I had made a decision. Rob and I have 2 sons. They're now 22 and 19. But when they were young, I had decided I want to homeschool them. And the main reason was, as a teacher, I really noticed that towards the beginning of my career, it looked very different than towards the end. And it had been much more geared towards test taking and training them to take tests and stuff. So I wanted to homeschool my kids. And so in the summer of 2014, I was just looking for free things to do in the city with my kids. And I don't know if you know this, but in Bryant Park, from June and July into August, they have Broadway in Bryant Park on Thursdays. And it really is, the actual Broadway stars come, it's free, it's in the park.
Very cool.
That's so cool. I used to do the Christmas with my family every year in Bryant Park. I love that area.
Oh, I love Bryant Park. Okay, so I started packing a picnic lunch, and I just would go in. And then later towards the season, it was one of those evenings when it got a little chilly, and a couple of friends went to get coffee. And one of the friends who was hanging out with it, and I put it on Facebook, and former students showed up and friends showed up, and people would drop by because they knew I was there on Thursdays in the summer. And then towards the end of the summer, a couple of people went to get coffee, and one of the women who was sitting at the table with me, Jessie, said, I'm really a tea drinker. I said, me too. And she said, but I only like drinking tea out of a real china cup. So I said, you know what? I have all these cups that were my mother's and grandmother's. I said, next week I'll come. I'll bring 2 cups and a thermos of tea, and you and I have tea. So I was getting ready, and I was packing up, and I said, well, if I'm going to bring 2 cups, I better bring 4 cups, because you don't know who's going to show up. And I said, and I'm going to bake up banana bread, because you don't know who's going to show up. So I did, and a couple of people showed up. And at the same time, I already mentioned a little.
The universe is working. I feel it. The universe is just working its magic in this story. It's like,
I know.
Liz is just magic, and it's growing from her face.
Oh my God. Well, it was, I had shared this earlier, right? But at the same time, my dad was devolving into Alzheimer's.
Oh.
And he was my great teacher, right? And as he moved further and further away, I thought the best way to honor him is to understand that, to create that beloved community. And so what I started to do, Jessie, what started out by accident, became this intentional exercise in beloved community. So I started throwing really just a weekly tea party. And I got to the part.
You manifested it. You manifested it. It's like so obvious, you know?
And so, until COVID hit, right? I went there every week. We bought like 30. I bought cloth tablecloths and put them down. And I put out 30 china cups and saucers, and I baked. And we brought thermoses of tea. And we really just did. We poured out tea and sandwiches. I would bring stuff every week. And summer, winter, fall, spring, we threw a tea party in Bryant Park, and everyone was welcome. And it really created that same sense of beloved community. And so it was really the way, yeah, we call it the Beloved Communi-tea. And that really became this way that I honored my father. But I do want to add something, because I've talked about my dad.
Yep.
But I want to add something about my mom, because in some ways they were perfect for raising me, but they were an interesting pair. My dad was this college professor who had this vision of beloved community, and my mom was an emergency room nurse. And so she and my dad had this ongoing, I can't say argument because they didn't argue, but my father used to say, we can change the world. And my mother would say, you can only change the person right next to you. You can only help the person right next to you. And I started to realize that the beloved community became a way of honoring both of my parents, right? I was going to find this way to create my dad's vision, but by serving and being with and connecting with whoever walked by.
But they're both right. And
yeah,
I hope, I was gonna say, I hope you've seen, like,
yeah,
literally, like, I had such an interesting, if you don't mind me sharing today, you know, I've been working on this script, and like very much like the first scene that I wrote, are the two main characters are both female, and I had them talking to one another, and first I realized that one of them was my mother, and then I realized that the other one was my mother too. And it was essentially like her mind, because like when I was younger, I used to think that she was a contrarian, because it seemed like no matter what I would say, she would say the other thing. And then literally at a certain point, I started kind of trying to test her. I'm like, I'm going to go this far this way, see what she says now. And sure enough, she would go the other way. And, you know, for a while, I was just like, she's just an idiot. And she's, just, you know, and then when I came into sort of the spiritual understanding of things that we talk about on the show all the time, about the polarity, I realized that so many people like this, you know, who you might call contrarian, or so many contrary views, that's exactly what you need. These people are unconsciously trying to point you to the other polarity. They're like, well, that polarity is true, but also this polarity is true. And then, you know, two things that are kind of always working to be true. Can we change the whole? Yeah, we can. But also, it is also true that you got to start with what's next to you and the thing that you're closest to, and where is your light shining from. So I mean, it's really like two different ways of looking at that same coin, and they're both right. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like I come to the realization, right, that my work grew out of that tension, and I don't mean tension like tense, like literally the meaning of tension, the pulling, right? In both visions. And what I found has been happening more since COVID, is I really think about, in the emergency room, everything's about triage, right? And so I think for me, what I'm trying to focus on is I have this big vision, right? Beloved community. But the triage moment is, what's the most important urgent need in this moment, right? What do I need to focus on in this moment? And that can change in any given moment. Right. And so that's where the balance comes in, right? It's exactly what you said, Jesse. It's who needs me in this moment, and how does that serve the larger vision?
Right. So great.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love it. So Jerry Shulman says, now you understand. She and her husband have been a positive influence in my life. She's the most loving soul I've known. Jerry, I feel like I know you. Jerry was probably in Rob's the little film we did over COVID, right? Maybe that's where I know Jerry from. So I just want to add to just kind of Liz's character testament, which everybody seems to know here, how amazing she is her family. And Rob, we've met Rob on the show. He's also an amazing guy, very talented filmmaker, got to work with freaking Cookie Monster. How cool is that? You know what I mean? But not only that, but the two kids that you were mentioning earlier, that you I think you were just having them in your story, are now grown up, and they're both very talented in their own right, and you know, kind of pursued the family lineage of filmmaking and creative storytelling. And just to as a little shout out, the science fiction story about Father, I think it's just called Father. It is so amazing. And I think we talked about that when Rob was here, but I think we might have even shown it. But it's just such a testament to you and your family and what you're trying to do. You know, it's all that vibration that you guys are all giving out, those ripples, because I felt that with Rob, and that's how Rob and I became friends and close. And it was just like, I think I even said on the show, there was just this instantaneous connection of, we were on the same frequency, and we knew it, so it was very cool. So tell us some more stories. These stories are great. And I love, by the way, that the people who are here that you brought here have probably heard this story over and over, and it's just so great to listen to you speak.
You don't get tired of it.
Yeah,
good.
It's real. It's real. It's got so much value to it.
I keep thinking, because it's because I'm wearing this shirt, but there, what you talk about, the infrastructure, like that, if like this much organization goes into the destruction of people, I think that half of my obsession as an everything, as a child and as an adult, with comic book mythology and Disney World and Pixar, and is that it all starts with a mouse. It all starts with an idea. And that these are really like the best examples of good things brought forth into the world with a little bit of calculation and the right effort. And there's not enough of that, so when you're somebody like me, you have to turn to imaginary things for inspiration. I got to look at Star Trek and go, one day the future could be better, because seeing it in play is a little difficult.
So I would love, at the time, it's kind of not connected to my peace building, but it's kind of a fun. I would love to tell you the story of how I met Rob. I don't know.
Yeah, tell us.
If you heard that, but I had originally gone to law school, right? I had two. My role models were my parents, but I always say I had two idols growing up, Gandhi and Cher, because I wanted to change the world like Gandhi, but I wanted to
look like Cher. I wanted to look like Gandhi. I love that.
So I originally went to law school. I went to law school because Gandhi was a lawyer, and in my second year of law school, at the end of my first year, we were sitting. I went to Fordham. We were sitting in Central Park after our exams, and we're talking about, well, what do you want to do in the law? Kind of what's your career going to look like? And we were all saying different things. And one of my friends from law school said, well, I'm going to get out. I figure I'll get out, work for a big company, make my money for about 10 years, and then I'll get out and do something I think is more meaningful. And one of my other friends said, no, you won't. And she said, what do you mean? He said, in 10 years, you'll have a mortgage and a car payment and a lifestyle. You're not going to get out. He's like, you're not going to leave and do something else you think is more meaningful.
You're wrapping yourself up, yeah.
And I thought, he's right. And I knew, as much as I wanted to be Gandhi, like in that moment, I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer, but I had no idea what I was going to do. And then I told one person, my friend Rich, and he said, Liz, I don't really want to be a lawyer either. I want to be a stand-up comic, but I'm afraid no one's going to laugh. So I said, are you kidding me? Do the open mics. I'll sit in the back. I'll laugh really loud. What do you think?
You only need one guy.
Yeah. And Rob. And
that's so sweet. That must have been the sweetest thing he'd ever heard in his life.
And so Rich was really good. I have to say, I thank goodness I have the talented friends, right? And so I used to watch him perform, and he and Rob were on the same circuit. So I had seen Rob perform a couple of times. And then we met at a show, and he asked me out. And that made me I was a little nervous. I was like, I don't know. He was wonderful, and I felt that connection. But at the same time, I met another man, and he asked me out. And I was sitting there because I thought, the way I work, I was like, I can't possibly go out with two of them. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know who to say yes to, because I was intimidated a little by Rob. He was funny and talented.
Right. On stage.
I have an older sister, and I called her, and I said, Mary, I don't know what to do. These two guys asked me out, and I don't know what to do. And she turned to me and not turned to me. She was on the phone. She said, Liz, if you date the comedian, he'll take you places where you can dress like Cher. And I said, that's right. And that's why I picked her.
That's great.
It worked out really well.
So you dress up like Cher occasionally?
Yes, check box.
No, but it was, and then we had our first date down in the West Village, right on, in Bleecker Street and around. It was really, I just knew in that moment, that same kind of connection, right? You feel it when you meet him. He's such a beautiful human, and
he really is. Yeah. And the same with you. It's such a great, amazing combination. I can't even imagine. I've never really experienced you in person, only online. We've spoken.
I know.
And I see what you post about, and we've definitely connected. But I can't even imagine the two of you together. I guess I can because I know your sons and I've worked with your sons.
Yeah.
So that is actually the two of you together, right? So
Yeah, it is.
yeah, very cool.
You know what you were just saying about the with you and your friends and law. This makes me feel like I should share a bit of my father's wisdom, which I tend not to share as much because he's very wise, but not really particularly spiritual. But there's plenty of things that he has said over the years that are spiritual. And he told me that he was going to school for a second, and I'm forgetting now exactly what it was, but like he was gonna basically for like a backup career. And he realized that if he had a backup and it got too hard, he would take it. And so he left college because he didn't want to have a safety net.
Wow.
And it's funny because I kind of made myself a safety net by creating as many things that I would like to do as options for myself. But I was very driven by, I'm not making a safety net. No, I don't like that, but I'm going to do that until I can do the thing. For all those reasons of like, you don't want to get stuck doing the thing that you don't want to do. Of course, there's a lot of ways to have that happen to you, but I always thought that was very wise, that it was like, I'm going to do what I want to do and I'm not going to have a backup. I'm just going to, until it works out.
That's great. And that was a really wise piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. You know what? It's funny because I find, it's interesting. I know Jesse, I know Dee, and I know what Jesse means when he says he's not spiritual. But I feel like everybody's spiritual. You know what I mean? And Jesse, we have our new friend Mind Dog. We have a friend Matt who does a podcast, and he's kind of this cynical guy, but he's totally spiritual. And he told the story about when he was getting married. He was a big sports fan, and he had just realized like, sitting and watching sports and enjoying it and upsetting his wife, was it worth this watching the sports? And he was like, you know what, it's not worth it. And he made this decision and his life was so much better for it. And he tells the story better, but to me, that's spiritual, to realize the energy, exchange that you're having with sports and with your wife and what's important and all of those things. I feel like that's all very spiritual, so it's just kind of funny. It's relating to what you're saying. Very cool. Wow. Very cool. Well, we got plenty more time. I'm loving your stories. I would love to.
Since we have a little lull here, I got to ask you. Well, or should I say, confirm for myself? You are indeed wearing a Hope, a Blue Lantern ring, and a Purple Lantern Indigo Tribe ring, huh?
I am.
Nice. I am. How did you get a hold of those promotional pieces of? I used to have every one of them. I gave them to my kids. I used to wear them all around my house. And I have the Star Sapphire for love.
Wow. You know what? I love that you asked that. And I find, it's one of those things, it's almost like a secret club, right? If you're when I was riding the subways, right? People would notice it. So when we would go to the city every week to go to Bryant Park, right? Midtown Comics is not that far. And the boys started out, Bryant Park is a small park and they would stay near me. But then they started branching out into the city. And one day the boys came home and came back to the table with some of these rings. And I asked about them. And I know that my son Jake is sitting in the other room and he's going to cringe at how I explain this, but you know enough that you can correct me. And he was explaining, right, the different energies in the different rooms. And so this is the Hope ring, right? This is the Hope ring. And
compassion.
Yeah, and compassion. And so I got a set of them and I keep them in a bowl on my table. And sometimes I do it randomly. I just say, what is it that I want to, what energy do I want to channel today? Right? What energy do I want to channel today? And sometimes I do it purposefully.
Oh.
Right? Sometimes I say, I need to channel Hope. And I had a funny story. I'm a huge tennis fan and I was at the US Open one year. And I was wearing the Hope ring. And you're going through and you put everything on the tray and come out. And I went to get to my seat and I was with a good friend. And I said, oh my God, I lost my ring. And she said, oh my God, Liz, you lost your ring? I said, I did. And she's like, what did it look like? And I think she's thinking I lost like a diamond ring. I said, I lost my blue ring. She said, the plastic one? I said, I cannot lose hope. I will not lose hope.
I cannot lose hope.
And I did find it. I found it. But I'm like, I said, I'm not going to lose hope at the US Open.
I will not lose hope.
What?
Awesome. I'm so glad I asked.
That's great. You know,
I'm glad you asked that too.
I don't remember where you're at, but Sunshine is reminding me that you're leaving us hanging on the tea story. So you were telling us about your community
Yeah.
gatherings and
Community.
I don't know
Yeah,
where
so
you're at.
really, we meet weekly, and when COVID happened, we really would meet weekly in Bryant Park, and everyone was welcome. And
So did you get to the point where you said like homeless people would come by and you would feed? I don't
Yeah.
remember where, because I heard the story also before. You
Yeah.
did. Okay, so you did talk to that, and everybody was welcome, and it's
Yeah,
real
I don't know if
community
I said that
building.
here, right? But that's the one thing. We have kept the tea party going virtually on Zoom,
Okay.
but there are people that I think about.
Oh, so you're doing it digitally during COVID?
Yeah, we do, but it's only people we know, right? You don't get drop-bys. And maybe I will share that
Can I
story.
drop by?
Huh?
Love tea.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. There are people, we're hoping this spring, right? With the first warm day, we're hoping to start back.
Oh
In
yeah.
person.
All right. I'm
Try to
so
go back weekly.
Yeah. Awesome.
But I will tell a story. I know you mentioned the homeless person, and that's, I know it's a tricky word, right?
Yeah.
And I worry about the people who used to come regularly, right?
Mhm.
But I would love to tell them one story that really affected me, and I haven't stopped thinking about this person. There was a gentleman who would come every week, and he did this really beautiful extemporaneous poem. He would come, do an extemporaneous poem, and I would pour him a cup of tea or a glass of water, but he would never sit down with us. He would never sit down with us. And I would pack up lunch, I'd bring him banana bread or whatever it was. And at one point, and as the time goes on, the tables expand and people sit there and we bring over more tables and more people. And some people are regulars and some people are new. And there was one week, and it was December right before COVID. And it was one of the last of the season, and we were sitting there a little bit shivering in Bryant Park. And he came to the table, and before I could see him, someone who didn't know who he was recoiled a little bit at him approaching the table.
Mm.
And he got very emotional. He started to cry. And I saw him and I said, "Are you okay?"
Mm.
And he said, "I'm tired." And I said, "Are you tired enough that you'll sit down here and have a cup of tea?" And he said, "Okay."
Wow.
And you know what? There was not, and I said, "What has you so tired today?" And he said, "I've been on the streets since 1977. That's what he said to me. Wow. He said,
long? So that
Huh?
was just a few years ago. So he's been on the streets for like 30 years.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so I said, I don't know what I can do for you in this moment. I said, but I want you to know how much it means to me when you come by and you make up your poems and you share your gift with us.
Mhm,
And,
mhm.
and he said to me, I'll never forget, he said to me, "I know, but the voices in my head that are my gift are also my curse."
Mhm.
And so that's a beautiful thing, right? Those of you who are New Yorkers or even not,
Mhm.
Bryant Park is really this very tiny park. It's very connected, and it really is this crossroads of humanity,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Because I will tell you, the only person who walked to the park who looked, if someone notices us, right, and they smile or whatever, I always invite them over. Except for there were only two people I didn't invite over, and they were Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift. And because they both were walking through the park, and I thought, oh, they're going to think I'm only asking them because they're famous. So it is this crossroads of humanity, right? You might run into, it's right near, for those of you who don't know New York, it's right near Broadway, it's right near Times Square.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's been this really beautiful, powerful experience to just sit. And I find if you just create a space, right? When I create a space, and sometimes it's just me at the table. That's rarely now, right? But if you create a space, then people find you, and they're the right people.
Mhm.
And Jesse, when you were talking about energy before,
Mhm.
I had an affirmation in a real way. There was one evening, and we were sitting there, and you have teacups. I have China teacups. It really does stand out in the park, but not everyone notices as they walk by. And someone stopped. It was a woman stopped, and then she turned around and looked at us and said, "What's going on here?" And I just said, "We're having a tea party." I said, "You're welcome to join us." And she said, "Because the energy is different right here." And no one had ever said that But I think it's funny. I have a friend who said she says things like, "Oh, I'm going to my friend's tea party. Come in the park." And she said some people say, "Oh, I'll come," and some people go, "No, that doesn't sound like anything I would want to do." And I think
Mhm.
it's about, yeah, if you put it out there, you attract to you people who belong. Yeah.
Totally. Oh, totally. 1,000,000%.
Comment on this a whole bunch. One, Michael, what I always love to say about him is one of the best aspects of him as a person is that he's a space creator. He creates great
Oh,
and it's really why I think he's such a great photographer, and he tends to get great photos, even out of not not to say like unattractive people, but some people are good at taking a photo and can relax, and there are certain models who you'll get in front of a camera and they just and you can get anything good out of it. And then there's other people you really got to kind of caress them to get them to relax, and Michael does that all the time. And when it comes to music, I've really learned this, especially like now, I'm working on a band right now, which is tentatively called the Flying Monkeys, but we might change the name to DILF because we've had a really great reaction to that name so far.
I think it's great.
But the whole idea really is that, when you go out on stage and you're putting on a show, especially when it comes to like rock music in particular, the gift that you're giving is sort of like godly freedom,
mhm.
a real connection to your inner peace and your willingness to do what you want to do and feel how you'd like to feel, and access to your emotions. And in order to do that, I really think that you have to create space for
Yeah.
people to come into and feel as though that's okay.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of different ways you might do this when somebody walks in the door, and the club can do it in the way that they present their club, but oftentimes it's kind of left to musicians to have to do that. And something you have to do very consciously to realize that you're here in service to the group,
Mhm.
to be a space for them all to let loose and to
Mhm.
feel the same things that you feel.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting though, because in connection to all of that, and I've never necessarily made this connection until you were saying what you're saying, but there's something brilliant that I've learned from feng shui. And in feng
Mhm.
shui, they say if you want a new piece of furniture, don't keep the old piece of furniture there. Get
Mhm.
rid of the furniture so that you can make the space
Wow.
for the thing. I'm in a really great relationship right now. My girlfriend Julie, before she came into my life, I was sort of unnaturally dating and like trying to see if there was somebody in the world who might, make some sense to me or whatever. And I finally realized that the way I was going about it was a bit unnatural and a little forced. And I just sort of cleared the slate for myself. Like there was like a dating app or two that I had like found myself back on. I'm like, I hate these things, and I literally just deleted them all. And I was like,
Made the space.
and but what I did was I created space, and like literally as soon as that space was created, it was gone. And there's similar things right now in my life that I just did recently that are creating space for me to find a new apartment, like or a new house, depending on what it is like. But the new space that I want, I'm opening up the doors to create the need for that stuff, and really creating space, consciously creating space, I think is really like the point, in everything that you do.
Mhm.
What does better look like? Better looks like a clean table, and
Wow.
we try again. We make some new drawings, a clean piece of paper, and we work on that next drawing. I think
Mhm.
that's this brings me just to one last thing. People are always so afraid, myself included, to do the thing that you haven't done yet. I haven't done that before. If I do it, I'm not going to be very good, and like I don't know. Well, the first one's not going to be great, but it's the
Mhm.
learning process to get you to the next one. And then so you get a new sheet of paper, and now you're going to draw the next thing, and over time it gets better and it gets better and it gets better. What does better look like? It looks like trying. It looks like trying to do
Wow.
something
What a
new,
good answer.
not just accepting the furniture, not just accepting what you're surrounded by, but going, you know what, this doesn't really work for me. I,
Wow.
and sort of making peace, I guess, with the loss of the thing that you had, that maybe hurt you. You know,
opening the space for what you will have. Yeah,
we'll hold on
that's
to the
great.
thing that hurts us just because it's there and we don't know
Right.
what it's going to be without that. But really, it's the bravery to sort of clear that slate and look at an empty canvas. You know, like that's
Amazing.
what better looks like. You know, and maybe perpetually.
I love that. So Alyssa Schwartz, another lovely friend of the show who we love, says Liz is pure divine love in action. One of my favorite people on the planet. I cannot tell you how warm I feel with community. Like you're talking about community and live stream of consciousness. One of your friends earlier, Jerry Shulman, he said, by the way, Liz, thank you for discovering this podcast. Exactly what I needed to grow my positivity. I'm feeling that. Hold on a second. I'm feeling that. I'm loving this platform. It feels like community to talk to you, to sit with Jesse and to talk to these people and have these amazing conversations and, so much love back and forth. And it's just so great.
I feel like Liz should be booking do you want to be our new booker? And you can just open up your Rolodex and all your sweet friends.
My friend Terry from the Peace Line. I'm working on booking people for we run Hope Story Circles. But I would definitely, Michael,
just jot them down.
Okay, sure. Yeah, let's talk.
When they're going to be in your story circle, and then also, and then we're good. We're covered.
So, one more time before you go, I just want to share your website, what better looks like. I mean, come on, it almost like you don't have to explain it. It just speaks to you so much. And Liz, your presence is phenomenal. I mean, you definitely drip this magic and this love. And listening to your stories, like I said, I had such an emotional response. I had to bring it to our viewers, and I'm so happy that you came and did this. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
Wait, I have a closing.
Hold on.
Yeah, Jesse.
What did you say? Because I don't think you quite said. What did you say to her when she said, "What does better look like"? Did you just immediately go online, start a website, and went, "Here, it's right here"?
No. When she said to me, "What would better look like?" I said to her, "I don't know." I said, "But I want to answer your question." And it's interesting because maybe this is a good last thought to end on. When we decided to, pre-Facebook and pre those things, in about 2010, when Facebook was I was just getting on there. That's when we decided to incorporate. And the only reason we wanted to incorporate was we wanted to raise money to help the village in Africa. So we had to incorporate. And I decided to see if I could find Jessica. And so I looked, I found a phone number and I called and I said, if you're the Jessica Molinaris who was in my 6th grade class and asked me what better it looked like, I just want to let you know that, what's happened. And she's working as a lawyer for the city of New York, really working in, I think, family services at the time. And she called me right back. She said, "Yes, Miss Gannon, that's me. And I invited her to my house. And in the meantime, we got in touch on Facebook. And she said, "Miss Graydon, everyone's on Facebook." So I really connected with hundreds of my students from there. Wow. So I worked it out with the 7 years later. So I didn't have an answer, but I think that's a good thing to be honest with as a teacher. I said, I don't know the answer right now, but I'm going to spend my life finding it out. And so I love that they've been able through Facebook a lot of times, especially to see that this is really something that I have continued to
yeah, I mean, I think what's so fascinating for me is just listening to your stories is your role in the story of how you listen to the questions that are being asked and how you respond and how they affect you and kind of put you on these missions and really it's like it means something so much to you. It's such a significant statement. Words are so powerful, and again, I just feel like I don't see a lot of people actually offering solutions, just saying, what the hell is wrong with the world and raising their hands and like Jesse was saying, just kind of dealing with it because that's the way it is. And we all need to be accountable for what we're putting out into the world. And you certainly are. You're super accountable, which I thank you so much for. And I love being a part of your world and that we've crossed paths and you're here. So,
me too. And thanks for the invitation. I'm glad we finally connected in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I guess that's the show for this week, huh? We're at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful. Thank you everybody for coming all of Liz's people who came over to see her talk. Thank you for bringing your love. And Jerry, you're welcome. Every week we do this. You're always welcome. We love positivity. We love the simple things that make life easier. And that's it. Jesse, what's up with you? You got anything to say before I?
Yes, I did. I just see a comment from Francis Bureau, and I couldn't remember it. It was from a meditation from just the other day. But I sit down to meditate, and I'll be there for a little while, and I tend to record lots of songs when I do. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to say, it ain't over till it's over. And there's just, it's any time. I've started channeling my football coach in 5th grade, and he in particular, Coach Isom, he was like 6'4", 6'6", couple 100 pounds, huge guy with his big deep voice, and he used to threaten to shove his size 13 shoes up my ass if I did not get in the game and kick some butt and do what I'm supposed to do. And I realized, that I've let, there's a good metaphor. The Axl Rose, he came out, I think at like the MTV Music Awards. It was probably like 15 years ago now, but he like runs out on stage like a sprinter, and he gets out to the front. By the time he gets to the microphone, he's like, "Welcome to the talk." Wait a minute. Woo.
Wait a minute.
Lost his voice, and I'm just like, that's just the perfect metaphor for everybody in existence who has gotten to any point where they're just like, "Oh man, like whoo. I need a second to catch my breath," and it ain't over till it's over. My mom likes to point to the encore. The encore comes after a while, and people have maybe not even been enjoying the show for the past hour. Maybe the show started out great and it's been boring, and then the encore comes and everybody leaves going, "That was the greatest show ever. Could you believe it?" Because that's how it works, So end on your encore, get back in the game, feel good about it.
Nice. Liz, stick around because we want to express our love.
It's over.
Goodbye. Peace.
Thank you, Jesse.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world